Tonight we're talking idols. We're going to find out which ones you've been holding on to. Let's go. Hey, what's up? Welcome in to the Not Safe for Sunday podcast. I am Josh. I'm so happy to be here, joined with the boys again. What's up, Kenny, Daniel?
Boys in the booth.
Boys in the booth. Spencer, Johnny Digital.
We're all here.
Everybody's here. What's going on?
Not too much. Great to be here again. Always. I was actually thinking about this today. What a joy it is. And I'm being dead serious here. I'm not trying to make a moment.
I'm going to blush.
What a joy it is just to hang out and do this with you guys. It's as a blessing, as much of a blessing for me as it is hopefully for the listeners, just to be able to sit and enjoy this time and just laugh and talk life. Straight up.
It was a great time.
Now it's your turn to say something nice.
Love and peace, by the way.
Josh, I think you're the beautiful, most handsome, amazing
he didn't say
person
me. He said
I've
this
ever
time.
This time. Trying
sorry.
to be sincere,
Yeah,
man.
I love you all so much. You guys mean the world to me.
This guy wrecks every moment there is.
It's because he's afraid to
He's afraid.
touch his
Let out
real
your true
emotions.
emotions.
Okay. We're going to unpack this right now.
What are you holding on? What are you holding on to?
All right. A deep dive into Daniel's emotional trauma. Is no.
Oh, man.
I do love it. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I swear. It's a good time.
I don't believe you.
Sharing a real moment that I had earlier today. I was like, it's such a good time. Watching back the episode, our last episode, and I was just like, you know what, we have a good time, and it's just talking life, and I enjoy it.
Dude, I feel like I don't watch the episodes. I go back and listen to them.
You gotta watch it.
I feel like I miss out on so much little minutiae that you can't pick up. You know what I realized though? I do a bad job when I'm agreeing with one of you and I don't say your name because the people that are listening, they have no idea who I'm talking to. So I got to do a better job saying, you know what, Ken, you made a great point. Daniel, that point sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly
classic.
what it would sound like.
It's classic, man.
But no, I'm loving doing this. This is a lot of fun. This is way more fun than I expected it to be.
Definitely.
We have a lot of laughs in this room.
We're 17 episodes in, right? This is 17?
That many?
Wow. Yeah, I think you're right.
Pretty sure this is 17.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Jeez.
we're almost a year in.
We're getting
there.
there.
It's wild,
couple
dude.
months we'll be.
Yeah, it was about what was it, February we met up last year and just started talking and brainstorming and here we are.
Time does fly.
That's kind of wild.
We're going to have a first birthday party.
Absolutely.
Bring the hats.
Yeah, bring the hats.
Bring the hats. Boys in the booth. Spencer, what's up, my man? How's your week going?
Yeah, it's good. It's just, it's Monday, so it's early, but it's pretty good.
You guys got to check out what he's wearing. Look at that sweater. That thing's mighty.
Work clothes. Thank you.
So good.
Man.
I got this from, I think it was Gap or Banana Republic up there in New Hampshire.
You want to?
up in New Hampshire?
Yeah, the outlets.
Nice. That's a good play.
Yeah. You want to hear two stores that are not in my budget? Gap and Banana Republic, dude. Not in the budget. You'll understand when you have kids.
Outlets, though. The outlets are where to play.
Even then, dude. I don't know.
I got a jacket that I still have to this day. Love this jacket. $7, Banana Republic.
$7.
$7 on clearance.
That's a steal.
I'm a clearance shopper.
Me too.
Clearance at the outlets, top tier. That's my top tier pinnacle of success shopping.
I'm a bigger boned man, though. They ain't too much my size at either of those places or on the clearance rack.
I usually don't win in clearance because I'm the definition of average as far as when it comes to
That's so true. What a true
length
statement.
of pants and waist and weight and height. Seriously, I'm right in the middle.
Yeah.
So
Oh man, that's funny.
I'm not big and tall. I'm not short like you.
Average hair loss. Average.
Probably above average. Or below average. I don't know which one is worse.
Oh man. So
Johnny,
good.
what's up, man?
Nothing much.
How's the video looking? I'm looking good in here.
Everything looks good.
Fix the eyebrows. We all right?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, man. How's your week going?
It's been good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any recent HIPAA violations? No.
Fantastic. We'll cut that out in post. Oh man, my week has been a good week. We are in the middle of a church-wide prayer and fasting right now.
Yes, we are.
And it's going in my home. It's a lot of fun. Like great fun.
Do you do you like bring the kids into it? I mean, obviously Sawyer. I mean, you're not gonna starve Sawyer, but
Yeah.
like how do
Why not?
you could withhold a toy or something from her, but
I do.
do you bring in the whole family into the fast?
No.
No.
Jeremiah's not ready for that.
Yeah.
He's. I don't even want to go.
Paw Patrol. He's not ready to give up Paw Patrol.
Yeah.
He's past. He's like past Paw
Boy,
Patrol,
I
dude.
don't
He's
even,
like.
I don't even know what they watch.
Yeah, it's all like YouTube unboxings now.
Oh my
gosh, those
I
are
know.
the
We have to do an episode on that
worst.
phenomenon
I
because it
know.
makes no sense to me
It
still
is
many years
epic.
Who
later.
are we fooling? We should be doing unboxings. We'd actually get paid for
I
this.
know.
We'd get
It's
paid
true.
for this.
We should.
That's true.
We should.
Oh, we got it all wrong.
We've been doing a
This
different.
episode
Oh, one of one Ken dog
is
doll.
brought to you by
Funko.
Oh my god!
I'm telling you, man, those things are huge. Like,
friend of the pod, Funko.
yeah, sponsor the pod. But the unboxings, for some reason, like, it's so big. Like,
It's so
especially the
strange.
mystery bags, dude.
You don't
like,
even need to buy kids toys anymore.
No.
You just get them videos of other people opening
That's it.
toys, and it's like
That's
the same
it.
high.
It's a whole thing, dude. It's a whole
Crazy.
thing. It's awesome.
Crazy.
It's awesome.
We're gonna do
Awesome.
an episode on it and figure out the phenomenon of
We
it.
should. We've been doing a different kind
There's got to be a
unboxing.
psychology deep dive of why that's
Yeah,
like
I don't get it.
even so popular.
I think it's like the anticipation of like, ooh, what can it be? What can it,
Mm.
like when you, all right, so when you were a kid, right?
Mhm.
We're going to unbox this now.
Uh,
When you were a kid, you do Pokemon?
no,
No?
my
That-
parents didn't let me.
It was after my time.
No?
Friends of the pod, my
J-
parents didn't let me
Johnny
do
was
Pokemon.
Johnny was into it for like a day.
You do baseball
Pokemon.
cards?
What?
Pokemon.
Pokemon, baseball cards, any of that stuff?
I
Any
was
of you
into Pokemon
guys?
for like maybe a year.
Yeah. Well, anything like that, it's like I think it's like the idea of like, I'm opening this pack and I don't know what's going to be in it. And I'm
Oh, for
hoping,
sure.
And I'm hoping that's going to be something like
Yeah,
epic.
but either way, the pack is in your hand. Like you get to keep those cards. Like
right.
I'm watching a YouTube video. I don't get anything. Like there's nothing tangible that I get to have.
I'm trying my best to explain this to you.
I got you. I got you.
Short story for a long period of time in life, but Johnny's sister used to make some YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Daniel will get the reference, and she'd get a few thousand views and all that.
Yeah.
Like one of her last ever videos was an iPhone, I don't even, maybe 11 or what, I don't even know what number, unboxing, 100K.
I bet.
I'm just like, what?
People love it.
Doesn't make sense.
People
to me.
love it.
Yeah.
People want to know
That's
what
the
it
part
does.
of the video I skip because I just want to see like how the product works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
But
that's
still,
the
it's all part of the whole
unboxing is
thing.
so boring. What useless.
I don't know why. It just has
Uh,
become a thing. But
Whatever. But I meant to ask if you bring your family into it because my niece Ella came up to me yesterday and she was like, "I'm fasting junk food. It's so hard." So she's been giving up any sort of snacks, and I mean, if you know her, she loves her sweets.
Takes after
She
her
loves-
Unky Daniel.
Loves her sweets. So she's having a hard time with it. But I thought it was adorable that she's fasting
That is cool.
along with the church. I thought
that
it was
is
cute.
cool. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think. I don't think that Jeremiah's kind of like would really understand what it's all.
It's all
about.
age appropriate
Yeah,
for
You
sure.
know what I mean?
So go on with your original story there. You're saying that's an interesting time in the Rogers house.
It's hard, dude. Because
hard.
it's
Okay,
hard. Yeah,
okay.
it's just like it's different. Because I'm I'm not fasting the way I typically have in the past. I'm fasting from reels. I'm not watching like
Sure.
any reels, dude. And I didn't realize how much time I spent doing that. But can you explain, like, for the listeners, why? I guess explain why at this we are doing this as a church together, and like what the importance is, and
Sure. Well, the whole reason for a fast is to, we're body and we're spirit, and we're because of course we live in this fleshly body, and this fleshly body has the needs and the desires that it has. Obviously we need food, we need water, and then, but also too, we need creature comfort. And not that we need it, but our body craves it always. But because we're also spirit, and our spirit comes from God, and our spirit wants to please God and wants to walk in ways that are more like godly, we do have to kind of create a separation sometimes because of how all-consuming and how all-influencing the flesh is. And so to really create that separation, you deprive your flesh of certain things
Right.
that otherwise you depend on, and it's like, I'm not going to do a deep dive into why you watch reels,
Right.
but there's something that, it's somewhat comforting, it's entertaining, whatever it is that we do.
Waste time.
Why we do what we do. And so when we become like accustomed to those things and depending on those things, and again, I'm not saying you depend on it, but
Right.
when we just become so accustomed to things, and then when we deprive ourselves of that, like there's something that happens that now there's like a void. And it needs to be filled. And so to fast is to create that, that void by depriving ourselves of something that we would otherwise be doing or accustomed to or depending on, and fill that void with God. And the greatest example of that is Jesus in Matthew chapter 4, where he goes and he's led by the Spirit into the wilderness to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. And then he comes out to be tempted of the devil. And the devil is tempting him with all the things that, we as human beings would depend on, with food. And then he kind of gets at him with like pride. And then he gets at him with, like riches and luxuries and the lust of the eyes and things that we desire. And because he fasted for those 40 days and 40 nights and was, I assume just so walking in the Spirit, he was able to withstand that temptation. And his responses to the devil, especially when it comes to the food one, he says that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And so, in other words, that void can be filled with God. And we can learn how to depend on him way more than we are. But like I said, in order to do that, we have to create a separation. In my life, I've mostly done food fasts. And let me tell you something. When you go 3 or 4 days without food and you deprive your body of that, the separation is like serious. You can actually really feel it happening as it's happening, and your mind just starts like,
it's crazy.
It's crazy, the things it tells you, the games it's playing with you, and like what you'll do for food, what it wants, to satisfy itself with food. It's just like you start thinking the most craziest things ever, and it's like, wow, this is real. There's a real separation happening, and my flesh is just so upset and angry, and it's like a slow death that we're trying to cause for it, with fasting. We're slowly killing our flesh, and Paul calls us to crucify our flesh, you know what I mean, to really put it in its place. I find that the best way you can do that is through fasting, and various things. It doesn't have to be food,
Right. I've done a 24-hour food fast to just be prayerful and stay in the Word for 24 hours and not eat anything. And like you said, it was like epic. It was like epic. And I think going into this season of the 21-day prayer and fasting, I really thought about it in a different way. And for me, it was really, what are those things that are occupying my time or occupying my thought space, my daily routine, that I could be and should be filling with time that I'm sharing with God in one way or another. And that's why I went with the reels, because I know I waste so much time like watching these mindless videos of whatever, people carving things out of wood or whatever it is. Like it's just
those guys building like the pools and the woods.
Oh yeah, digging the mud, dude.
Digging the mud.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a farce, by the way. I don't know if you heard the unpacking of that.
Oh no,
that's fake.
Oh
yeah, off camera they bring in like excavators and stuff.
No,
I don't know. That's the rumor.
The guy's like squirting something into the water, and all these fish are coming out.
Yeah.
So it's like all this time that I've wasted doing all these things that like I really could be and should be, if I want to continue to further my walk with God. These are things like I really should be, instead of filling my brain and my time with this nonsense, I really should be filling that time with Him and with His Word, or in relationship with Him through prayer or whatever it may be. So that was kind of how I got to what I got to for this 21 days of prayer and fasting. But just thinking about it, it really kind of brought to my mind like the thought of what an idol is, because you hear it thrown around like beware false idols and things like that, and when I kind of think of it, I think of it as along the lines of, well, what is something that's keeping me for God? What am I giving more attention to than I'm giving to God? And I think my thought was, I wonder if that's what a lot of people think when they go through this season of prayer and fasting is what am I idolizing instead of God? What am I putting in front of Him? And I guess maybe you guys can explain more the thought process of basically what idols are from a biblical perspective, what modern day idols may be. I guess let's start with what is an idol? What are these idols? These false idols, as I guess they're called.
Yeah, I mean, I think biblically speaking, what we see the most is the golden calf.
Yeah.
In Exodus, I believe it is, and Moses goes up in the mountain to hear from the Lord, and he's up there and he's hearing from the Lord, and the Israelites are down at the bottom, and Moses is up there so long, they're like, who's that guy Moses anyway? Let's make for us the gods that actually brought us out of the land of Egypt. And so they throw all their gold in a pile. They fashion this golden calf, and they just start worshiping it. Moses comes down from the mountain, and he's so aggravated, he just snaps the stone tablets with the 10 Commandments from the Lord. And so I think from that story, it's anything that really it takes our focus off of glorifying God and giving Him the glory, or making Him the priority in our life, really casting aside and elevating anything above the worship of God. So it's anything that we worship or prioritize, give more time, give more attention to, really than God. And I think it sometimes in a practical sense is really easy, and in a spiritual sense it can kind of be a little sneaky, because we can very much create little idols for ourselves in different ways, which we can definitely unpack throughout this episode. But
because I think it's not as tangible as that golden calf that this thing that is a physical manifestation of something. So
it's I'm not worshiping a golden calf, so I don't have an idol.
Right.
But
I just had the dopest thought though as you were talking, and I don't know if I've ever thought about it like this, but as you were saying it, it just hit me, because all right, the Israelites, when they were in Egypt, they were slaves, and God allowed them to plunder the Egyptians, and so they had nothing, and they left with all that gold. So it doesn't I think it's always hard to relate Old Testament idol worship to modern times, but think about it. So all their gold, this stuff of value that God said, you can have this, you can take this. They're just giving it up. They want you out of here so bad, so they leave with all this gold, and it's just a thing, right? It's gold. It's something of value.
Right.
It becomes an idol when they fashion it into an actual idol and then worship it. And how different is that than how we do it? Because God blesses us with things with monetary value and things of value. It doesn't have to be an idol though. Just like that calf did not have to be, that gold did not have to be an idol.
That's so true.
It was just gold. And when they put it, because an idol is an object of worship. So when they made the gold an object of worship, that's when it became idolatry, and that's
it wasn't the calf itself.
Wasn't the calf itself. They made it
so worship of
it's the same thing. Our cars, our houses, our money, our paycheck, our monetary value, people. These are all things that can be blessings and that can be given to us by God, just as that gold was given to them by God. It's an idol when we make it an object of worship.
Wow. If that doesn't make a real clip, I don't know what will. Dude,
it better.
So good.
Because I don't think I've ever thought of it like
so
that until you were
good.
talking, and then it just hit me. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow, that is a great.
That's dope.
That's gonna make a sermon series. I know it. I know it is.
Take note. Clip that.
That's great.
That was fantastic. The other thing I thought about too was, as you're telling that story, and Moses wasn't even gone for that long. He was up there, 40 days? 40 days. These people were slaves for however long.
Just their attitude, though, it sucks too, man. So
I know
bad.
dementia patients who have better memory.
It's they're like, we don't know what's become of this Moses fellow.
Yeah.
It's like he's some bum off the street.
Yeah,
He literally stood up to Pharaoh so you could be free, and by faith
the Red
took
Sea.
you across a stinking ocean So you could be free. We don't know what's become of this mellow. And they say, and this God of his.
Yes, and this God of his.
And this God of
that
his.
disassociation, right? Because remember, it's like taking it back to that heart issue, right? It's disassociation. The mouth is speaking out of the abundance of the heart. And so they've already disassociated themselves in their heart. Now they're just calling it, and this God of his.
And then to add the insult to injury, once they fashion the thing, they say, behold, the God that delivered you from the Egyptians.
Yeah. Making a mockery.
And the calf, they learned that in Egypt because that calf was an image of a god from Egypt and what they worshipped.
Well, and like taking it back, I mean, now it's like, okay, now we're really unpacking this. Is like, you're saying how these physical objects became a source of worship and it really replaced God. And really making that parallel to today, it's like, we do have so many blessings, especially God in America where we live. We are blessed beyond blessed beyond blessed. And, I think all too many times we've seen it in ministry where people will come, they'll start coming to church or they'll come to Christ and they'll be like, oh, they're typically I'm having a hard time and, I'm looking for a miracle or I'm looking for a breakthrough from God. And so they're seeking God, seeking God, seeking God, seeking God. And then the blessing comes. Where do they go? How long do they stick around?
40 days.
40 days. Yeah. That's generous. That's
days.
generous. Like
who
is this God guy?
It's kind of like 40 hours, to be honest with you.
It really is. And then it's like as soon as the blessing comes, gone. Just like the parable of the 10 lepers who were healed and only one came back to thank God. Right? It's that same effect. It's like we've misappropriated that thinking that the blessing really is our God, in that we're not serving the God of the blessing. And so it's like we've seen it all too many times where it's like I'm seeking God for this house. And then it's like, oh, I can't even be in community because my house demands too much attention.
Well, now I got to work 80 hours a week to pay for it, and so I have no time to go to church or do anything like that.
I'm seeking God for this job. I get this job, and then all of a sudden, I can't spend any time with anybody because it's sucking the absolute life out of me, and it's destroying my family. And so is the money worth it? Is the job really worth it? So it's all of these things where we misappropriate God's hand of blessing, and we misappropriate that and abuse it and turn it into an idol that we worship, and then we totally turn our backs on God.
And to your point, I don't think, I think also why we have a hard time relating to like Old Testament like depiction or stories of idol worship is that you see this like overt like ceremonial type of worship, but in the case that Daniel's talking about, it's like if something is becoming an object of worship, like it's higher than me. It's its own God to me. Right. And if it's God, then I'm lower than it. And you see how you become a slave to it. And to worship it is to really to bow down to it, because even in an unintentional way, because I buy the house with good intention. I want to bless my family, but I live beyond my means. And so now I got to work 80 hours to pay for this thing. And this thing that I was like, I loved and was going to be a blessing has now become an object of worship, but not in that way of like, oh, I love worshiping it. It's like, I'm a slave to it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Wow, that's a really good point. Kenneth, yes, Kenneth. That's a great point, Ken. Thank you for reminding me.
That's a callback.
Thank you for reminding us.
I did the callback.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm getting better at this podcast.
Wow.
We're going to get there one day. We're going to get there. As you're talking to it, it made me think in a different area is no wonder why, like, God doesn't give me a sign. That's what I hear from non-believers is like, if God's real, like, why doesn't he just show up? Why doesn't he give me a sign? Because he knows you guys are going to turn your back. You'll be wowed for that day.
Yeah.
And then you'll turn your back and go back to the same crap you were doing before. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So that kind of brought to what you were just talking about, kind of brought that to mind. But I guess, do you find now as leaders within the church, do you find people coming to you and outright saying, like, I've made this thing a priority in my life higher than God? Or is it something that has to really be unpacked?
Yeah, I would say that's like the minority. Like somebody who comes to their senses, like, yeah, I've screwed up. I've made this an object of worship.
Yeah.
It does happen, but I'd say it's probably few and far between, right? You know, the people that
I'd
can come to
agree.
that personal revelation, it's way more that it either has to be pointed out to them, which they don't want to hear anyway, or they just get so entrapped
Right.
that it becomes
It
like
brings it to their knees.
crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what ends up being some of the consequences, I guess, of this like idolatry that's happening in these people's lives?
I guess it depends on the idolatry, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a slave, you know, to really anything that's taking your time away from God, whether it's whether it could even be drugs, you know, that you're worshiping. It could
Yeah.
be even your own pride and seeking like glory and legacy and all these things. It's like I think it kind of depends on what it is in the nature of how it's unpacked, you know. And so you create your idol for your job. Well, you know, your family falls apart, and typically it's, you know, that's the kind of crisis call moment that we get where they're on their knees because wife's walking out the door because you haven't been there emotionally, physically, you haven't been present. You haven't been a parent, a husband, you know, you haven't been there emotionally or any sort of thing to really be, you know, participating in the home and the life of the home and leading the family. And instead, you know, you're out just trying to get the dough.
Yeah, I was my first reaction to that is divorce. That's the consequence, because typically that's how it plays out,
Big time.
especially in a church full of families, you know. So we see the unfortunate side of that. True story, you know, the names have been changed to protect the innocent, but, you know, some years ago, you know, married couple kids, and the guy just, you know, he looked around and he saw people that were prospering more than him, and he saw that they had started these businesses, and by businesses I mean multi-level marketing schemes. And so, you know, that's all for show, because a lot of times somebody will take out a loan and go get a really nice car to make everybody believe and think that he's prospering, so that they'll sign up with his business. So this guy who was a
For the listeners, he's every
Oh,
time
yeah,
he
I'm air
says
quoting.
business,
Thank
we're doing
you.
air quotes.
Thank you for
Yes,
catching that.
yes.
We have listeners as well as viewers. So so he hardworking guy, made good money in what he was doing, but he really like was intent on doing this.
Yeah.
The wife was never on board. She could kind of read the tea leaves and see what was going to happen and that they were going to be mess. And it became the idol. And he just pressed through, and he drove through every stop sign along the way, blew through every stop sign, and drove right off the cliff. And, you know, house went into foreclosure. You know, finances were in ruin. Well, when you don't work, that happens.
Right.
And it led to divorce. You know, and so, yeah, I mean, when something becomes that object of worship, and I just want this thing so bad that everything else becomes second to it, you're gonna get what you're chasing.
It's funny how you've kind of categorized this into, it's almost two different things. It's an object of worship that you actively are desiring, or it's an object that is a part of your life that you're a slave to. It's funny how those are the two parallels, because one of them is almost like it feels good. It feels good that I really want this because it's going to make me feel better. This other thing is like, oh, this is a consequence of my bad choices or my bad decisions.
And unfortunately, those two things, if you go far enough and you're blind enough and you don't like really look up or turn around, those things will meet.
Yeah.
You know, you do typically run into the wall of consequence, you know, when something becomes an idol or stays an idol for too long.
I think a lot of it too is that aspect that we talked about before. The golden calf, as an example of what an idol is or can be, being a tangible thing, I think most people can recognize that. Like, I think especially when I was younger, when I would think of, oh, you don't want to make somebody a false idol or something like that, I would think of like an actor, actress, somebody that I'm giving my attention and all my care and worship, and I love this guy so much, you know what I mean? And like my life is now like 24/7, whatever, Will Smith or whatever it is, and like his whole career and everything, and like all this time dedicated to like fanboying over Will Smith, like that. I think that was like when I was younger, that's how I would view this, and there's probably some people that still do view it as that, but now that I'm older, I'm a little more mature. I've realized like I said before, the reels, like money, the better job, the nicer house, the nicer car. You know what I mean?
You want a cool story? So I'm in middle school, big Guns N' Roses fan. Guns N' Roses came out when I was in middle school. Axl Rose, Slash, and the whole thing, right? So Axl Rose used to wear this T-shirt like on tour, and it said "Kill your idols," and it was a picture of like the face of Jesus, and I think it's a depiction of him like on the cross, kind of in agony, and you got the crown of thorns on. And I think the message of the T-shirt was that, like kind of speaking to your point of worship, is that eventually every idol, it betrays us and we want to tear it down. And in the case of Jesus, they put him on a cross because they made an idol of him, and he was not what they thought he was. They expected him to deliver them from Roman oppression and to cause a revolution and overthrow the Roman government and the oppression they were facing, and he didn't. And not that he was a failure, because obviously that's not why he came. He came to the cross to forgive, to forgive the world their sins. But they put him, and it's amazing that every single one of our idols eventually disappoints us, and we want to tear it down. And it could be that big house that I know for a fact that people just want to light a match to it. Say, man, if I could just be out from under this thing. Or the car, the insurance job, light a match to that. I just want to be out from under this thing. Or the stars, the celebrities that undoubtedly always at some point disappoint us. We find out that they're human beings. We find out that they're flawed. They end up to be diddlers or sexual predators, or honestly, you run the gamut on what happens.
It's true.
And then we end up tearing
Absolutely.
We end up tearing down our idols, and it's just so deep, and it's like that shirt from like 13 years old always stuck with me, because just of the graphic imagery of it, the depiction of it, but the message, kill your idols. I'm like, I didn't understand it until I got older, and it made sense to me.
That's deep.
It's funny that you say, like, the fact that all these things can kind of fall apart, because I find myself now, because I've prayed for a long time, like, to be where I'm at today, like it took a lot of prayer, and it took a lot of maturity to realize, like, do I want to give up this time at home with my family to take this better paying job? Now that's going to be an hour and a half travel every day. Do I want to give up X to do Y? You know what I mean? And I think it took me to a few years into my 30s to realize, oh, you know what? Some of this stuff is really not as important as I thought it was. And it took me a while to realize, like, I have to be patient and realize that God is going to provide for me, and it's going to be exactly what I need.
Yeah.
It's not what might not be what I want at the time. It might not be that emotional impulse, like this, I got to get this car. It's the newest car out. It's the Cybertruck. Shout out to Spencer. It's a Cybertruck. I need to get it. I need to be the first one to have it. I need to drop this, whatever. And then you get it, and you're like, it looks like garbage. It drives like garbage. It's a terrible vehicle. You know what but it took some years of mistakes and having bad impulse control, I guess, to like realize, like, oh yeah, you know what? I kind of probably have to fix this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it can be very physical, like, the pursuit of things. We love buying new things, like you're saying, and that becomes the object. I know, like, for me, when I want something, like, tunnel vision comes up. Like, I am just thinking, let's harken it back to, like, what was it, the third episode when I brought up that beautiful tractor that I wanted, right? my wife grounded me in a, not in a bad way, but she was my grounding, my foundation, right, to bring me to reality in a little bit. But I just get tunnel vision. Think of what I can do. Think of this. Think of that. I could plow. I could do this. We haven't had one plowable snowstorm in the last 3 years, dude.
Global warming, dude.
It's so.
That thing would have been the best lawn decoration.
I would have spent $15,000 to $20,000 on a tractor that I would have picked up one stone in my yard with and called it a day. So it's like, but I get tunnel vision and I lock in, and that becomes like the source of like what I'm thinking about, what I'm consuming, like what I'm Googling, what I'm like looking up late night in bed, and I'm just I'm watching videos about it, and I'm like, I want to find ways I can make more money so I can buy this thing. And so I kind of get tunnel vision. It's very easy to kind of create idols of it.
Spencer's shaking his head.
Yeah, you shaking your head, Spence. What do you got?
We're all shaking.
Spence.
No, I think we're all shaking our head because
absolutely.
This experience that you're having, this is like, I think it's way more common than people really think.
1,000%.
You know what I mean? Because dude, I can't tell you how many hobbies I had for about a week. I mean? Collecting comic books, like playing this video game, doing this, buying that, and it's like, eventually it's like, once I get my little fix, all right, I'm bored. I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Turn
that idol right down.
Yeah.
Dude,
disappointed you.
It disappointed me.
Wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
No, and I think that's the point I was making, is I think we all have that, and there is no satisfaction that comes with it. There's a very short term,
definitely.
Very quick turnaround of like
instant gratification.
This is the greatest day of my life, and then right out,
boom, and right down, and then it's the pursuit of the next thing, right? So when the tractor wanes, and that was like a week of just riding around your yard doing God knows what, it's like, okay, then what? I remember wanting, like, I fixed my eyes on a drone. I want a drone. I need a drone. I'm gonna use it all the time, dude. I bought. And, like, I barely buy anything brand new. I'm always buying used.
I taught you well.
But I was so, exactly. And I was so fixated. I needed this drone. Dude, went out, spent like $450, saved up my money, by the way, bought it cash, saved up my money. Shout out to Dave Ramsey. All right, so I bought it cash. I had the money budgeted. All right, I didn't take out.
Explain what money is after.
Okay, well, I didn't take out a loan. I had budgeted for it, saved for it. Finally got it.
Flew it 3 times.
Used it. I mean, this thing has less than 3 hours of flight time. Like, 3 hours is generous.
Wow.
And it's sat in a case in my bureau in Hutch years.
Yeah.
Years. Spent $450. I fixed it. I was like so locked on this thing. I saved up for it. I put all my money toward it. I was like so locked, thinking like it would be the next greatest thing, and got it, and wow, does that wane quick, man.
He money is a budgetary item for like things that he wants to buy, where she money would be a budgetary item for things that his wife. It's just play money that they'll budget. So it's not like coming out of the general budget, and it's not like, oh, like this is going to take out of this expense or whatever. So we
should do a finance
We'll do a
episode.
finance. Spence, you got something? Because you were shaking your head pretty vigorously when Josh was first talking.
How's that Cybertruck coming?
No, not good. No, my wife needs a car first.
Not enough money.
Touche. You got that quick. Nice job.
I picked it up.
No, damn, when you were talking, like, I'm like, this is me. This is me right now.
Yeah.
Like, I've been on this gun thing lately.
Yeah.
And, like, I just been watching all these, like, handgun videos.
Yeah.
Like, all the time. And now I just know, like, all this random information about handguns. So I'm like, I know the one. Gonna get it.
Yeah.
I want it. And then my wife's like, why? Like, why do you need that? And I'm like, it's
a gun.
part of it. It's part of it. It's what men do. So it's part of the it's part of life.
When I first got like my LTC and all that, I was the same way, dude. I would be researching, watching videos, like looking up, like pricing out, like nonstop. It was unhealthy. And it is. That's what we do.
And I think it's a subtle thing. It's like, if it's all consuming, you know, we're creating an idol of it, whether we want to or not. And whether that's like, you want to build a chicken coop in your backyard. Well, if that's the object of your thought 24/7,
you're gonna offend the chicken coop people.
I'm
shout out to the chicken coop people.
I'm talking about myself because
sponsor the pod.
That's my recent thing. Like, I'm all about
chickens. He's on the chickens.
Right now.
He's gone from tractors to chickens.
I'm a real country bumpkin, dude. I'm on my chicken kick right now. And
next will be pigs.
But I think it's like, you know, anything that's taking our time, our attention, our ambition, our thought, like all those things we're striving for constantly, consistently. It's like, how many times have I, opened my Bible at night instead of like
It's a great point.
scrolled? And so like we're talking about this fast, we were talking today in the office, and it's like you don't realize how much time you waste. And so
Totally.
I have so many more hours in a day because I'm off of social media and off of YouTube right now, and it's like, wow,
Right.
all this useful time I get to spend with the Lord. And so I don't delete the apps. So what I do is I put like a screen time notification, so that way if I do go to open it, it just says like your time's expired. Because if I do click on it, I want to practice the self-control of like, okay, I opened my phone, I was gonna waste my time, so now let me go read the word.
Yeah.
So then I'll force myself, okay, I'm going to go read a couple verses, I'm going to read a chapter, I'm going to read whatever it is. So if I go to click on Facebook, I could have clicked the Bible. So I'm going to go to the Bible. I'm going to spend some time with the Lord, or I'm going to say a quick prayer to just, that's your reminder of that detachment, and
There's so many good points that have been made in this little however many minutes this little portion was. But because the first thing is, yeah, like you said, I think so many people can relate to that aspect of just being so hungry for this one thing and then it just fizzling out almost immediately after you get it. I think so many people can relate to that. And I think the other point that I wanted to make is, I think there's a different piece to this puzzle where can get, I want to say, darker in a way, where now you are consuming. Because now I find myself like just walking from my office to the floor where I work, and in that walk I'll find myself reaching in my pocket to pull out my phone to watch a reel as I'm just making a whatever 30-second walk, just because whatever, I need to stay constantly stimulated for some reason, whatever my problem is. But I can imagine now how quickly, depending on what you're taking in, the ideologies that now are being planted in your brain about whatever it may be. So now it's that 30-second clip, you're consuming this about whatever it is. Maybe it's a
chicken coop.
Yeah, maybe it's a chicken coop. Well, maybe the next one is like a girl in you know what I mean? Some nice short shorts. Feeding the chickens. You know what I mean?
Gotta lock them doors and turn the lights down low. Feed them chickens and go to know. Sorry.
Oh, that's good stuff. Oh, man. But that thing that started off. I'm right back into it, dude. I'm right back into it.
You got back quick, because I don't know how you did that. I never seen you slap the couch before.
I'm all business. Right now.
Bring it back.
So, this thing that started off as a mindless time filler. Shh, be quiet over there. This thing.
Oh God, we're gonna blow.
I don't know about this blowing, dude. I don't know. But this thing that started off as a mindless time filler now has potential ramifications of a path that's going to lead me away from God. And I think it's something that we don't think about in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think that's where the definition of idol being an object of worship. I mean, you can't worship. Worship itself is you're lifting something and putting it first.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so if God's not first, something else will be. And if something else is first, God won't be. And so many things have the potential to take the place of God. And it's I think it's one of those, not fine lines, because I think people could listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, is this an idol? Is this an idol? Is this, and I don't want people to think like that, but I mean, anything really potentially has, the possibility of being an idol. If these things aren't bad in and of themselves, but
I don't think we're saying you need to 24/7 be locked in the word and nothing else but the word.
No, but I think, like I said, like any of these things can be, and it goes back to, again, a lot of conversations we've had before. And one thing I was thinking about today when we were getting ready for this discussion was, I think ultimately the the biggest or the most prominent idol is self. You know what I mean? I think just inherently sinful man always is looking to elevate himself above everything and be their own God. And so we are our own worst idol. And I was thinking about it from a standpoint today and trying to compare it to like some Old Testament stuff and how a lot of this stuff has never changed. And this is kind of like a deeper, facet of this. But like with something that we've talked about a lot lately and it being like, the affirmation being like the God, the idol, which is really, making self idol. So with affirmation as as the greatest idol and self as the greatest idol, now, as we've talked about, the mortal sin is to not affirm and is to correct or to say, what you're doing is wrong. And we see the behavior that people are living out right now. And it's you can easily compare it back to the Old Testament. And I think about just like the sexual perversion that is driving so much in our world right now. And, the idol worship back in the day, it would you'd close your eyes, it would make you blush because so much of it involved like cult sexual practices and sexual perversion. And they would justify it because these gods, if we worship this God, it's like a fertility God, it will rain on the land, it will have a good crop. Think about all the things that, people justify and why they do what they do, even when there's grave consequences, because, we need this or and I think it goes back to that affirmation thing. We cannot affirm. We cannot not affirm. And so we justify all the practices that we do, and they did it back then as well. And so nothing's really changed when it comes to idol worship, and when idol worship involves something that's questionable, reprehensible, damaging, because it will always be justified. Why? Because I've put this as the priority above everything else and above God itself.
Well, and even I think having like served in the church now for a little while, right? It's like you can even see this in how sometimes we can cloud our vision with serving. Like serving on the worship team for, since I was like 13 years old, I've seen people and even myself at times where worship was actually an idol. And it's 100%. Like, okay, I'm doing this for God, and worship is for the Lord, right? But
I gotta put on a show.
But is it, right? Am I doing this for myself? Like, or am I actually here to serve the Lord and lead his people into his presence? Like, why do you do what you do? What is the motive of your worship? Or even like, am I just on this just to play and have a good time? Do I like just being in a band? Right? I mean, and there was a season where I had to take a couple years off from the team because I had it all mixed up. Like everything was mixed up. And so, you have to reach these moments where you really look inward. And so if you're trying to figure out, do I have any idols, and you're listening to the podcast right now, you really have to look inward. I think fasting is a wonderful way to find out what your idols are real quick. Right?
Oh yeah.
So, in the light of that, right? It's like fast, we seek, we lack wisdom because we don't ask for wisdom. Right? We don't ask, we don't seek, we don't knock. And so the door will never be opened. So we need to be seeking after God's heart. God, reveal to me what is an idol in my life. What am I putting above you? And if you're walking with the Spirit will convict you. I promise you. You'll have that thing that even though you're like, oh, no, it's not that, but you'll have it knowing. And the more that you pray for awareness, the conviction will grow until eventually you're going to have to cave under the weight of it and give it up and understand like, okay, this is an idol. And so identify your idol, and then what am I going to do about it? Like, if your eye causes you to sin, cut it out. Like, what's the length you're willing to go to take this idol down? How much of an idol have you created out of this thing? And that's really only something that you can answer.
Right.
And if you can't answer, well, get around some healthy, if you're a man, get around some healthy men. If you're a woman, get around some healthy women and talk to them. and say like, hey, like I'm struggling in this area. Like how can I navigate this? I've created an idol out of this, or I'm spending too much time after that. Like, what can you do that allows you to really have an awareness? But then it's not good enough to just be aware. Where's the action?
Right, the action.
Where's the action? How far are you willing to go to cut this out of your life? Is it false humility? Is it false peace? Living under this protection of false peace, protecting the home because you don't want to step on toes. You don't want to piss off the wife who's actually a controlling maniac freak at home. And you don't want to piss them off because you have to protect the false peace. All right, well, where is it? Like, you have to create action because just awareness isn't simply enough. If you're not willing to cut it out, well, you know the road.
You're gonna keep being like the Israelites and pretending that this thing is the thing that got you to where you're at.
And you'll never see the promised land because none of those people saw the promised land. They never stepped into what God had for them and why he brought them out of Egypt to begin with. It was the next generation that stepped into the promises and lived out the promises God had for the Israelites. Because God's faithful. His word's not going to come back void. They did see the promised land, but it was their kids.
Right.
It was their kids. It was the next generation because this generation was too wicked, too stubborn, and too messed up because they were so caught up.
Too many idols.
Too many idols.
And if there's one thing consistent about God's people, whether it be Israel or the church, is that we are as susceptible to idolatry as anybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes we even promote it, really maybe subconsciously, half subconsciously, we promote it because you'll see, and it's very similar. Like the golden calf becomes the metaphor for these things because it's so similar. Just as like the Israelites kind of grew like bored or like dull or complacent because their leader was gone so long and all this stuff. Well, same thing. I mean, churches go through like seasons of like the doldrums, you know what I mean? Where there's maybe not a lot happening. Hasn't been maybe some growth, or it's not as exciting, or the sermons are not as dynamic or whatever. The worship's been a little subdued. And so churches will create these little subcultures, and kind of promote something that I can like kind of hang on to for the excitement, or something that drives the energy that I used to have. And a lot of times it's not healthy at all. And maybe about 15 years ago, through many, many churches in America, there was this kind of like hyper Israel culture, hyper Israel worship thing that swept through the churches in such a way where like they were like, it started off as maybe like a special, like almost like worship night, like that focused more on like the land of the Bible and Jerusalem. But then before you know it, like people are dressing up like Hasidic Jews, and then they're blowing the ram's horns, and then they're like, and what starts out innocently as something that like, oh yeah, this is like celebrating, like I'm celebrating God's people and biblical culture and all these things. They can grow into these little subcultures that now are like, it is the golden calf, and if you dare speak against it, you'll be ostracized.
Don't speak against what's the name of that horn, dude? Don't speak against
the shofar.
Shofar, yeah, ram's horn.
Don't speak against the shofar.
And it's like,
how
dare you speak against God's people like that, and how dare you tear down what we're trying to do to build up, it's like, man, things haven't changed at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Left to our devices, we'll create all kind of idols and we'll cling to them, and they will be these golden calves that man, I'll stand in front of that thing. Don't you dare destroy it.
We'll justify it all day long.
Yeah.
We'll find the things that even the scripture sometimes we can use to justify it.
I think, like, going back to your example of the tractor. You're already trying to justify it before you even got it.
100%.
You know what I mean? So we're trying to justify this thing. We know, like, deep down inside, yeah, probably not the best idea. And so we're trying to justify it before we do it. We're trying to justify it. See, as we have it. See how good this is? I'm going to make so much money off of this.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, what are you going to do with that?
And
For why? Why do you feel like you need to do that?
100%. We grow to justify it all the time. And that's where, like, I got to, like, know thyself, right? Know thyself. And so I have to know my inclinations to create idols out of my objects of desire. and I need to throttle that down.
Yeah.
And a great way to throttle that down is to bring my wife into it, because she's going to hold, and that sounds cocky, but
No,
I
no,
mean
it's a
that.
good
and
point.
is she's my accountability. She's my largest
100%.
accountability in life, because there's health there. There's a healthy dynamic. A lot of marriages, like, you bring your wife or your husband into it, it's going to be a nightmare. But I have somebody who's pulling alongside of me, who's elevating me, who's supporting me, loving me, building me up, and I could bring her along into my desire, my objects of desire, and she's gonna have a clearer discernment than I am, because now my object of desire is like my only focus. And so bringing her into it, that's like a conversation that I get to have. And all right, I know, am I creating, like, am I just hyper focused on this? Is this like way too much? Am I giving this too much time? Is this just a waste? Is this one of those, is this a drone situation where I'm going to have it for 3 days and it's going to sit on a shelf and it's going to be a complete waste of money? So,
Yeah.
you know.
You still have that thing?
I do, dude.
You should give it to me.
Yeah, you know what? I might bless you one day. It might
See it on
it might
Marketplace.
top your Funko Pop Christmas gift.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Never.
Put the guy on it. Put him on it.
Oh, now you're thinking.
Connecting to your last thoughts, you know, it's like, you know, we all know people who, you know, are the toy guys, and they, you know, it's like, think it, see it, it's already in the garage.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And we, I think, I know me and you do for sure. You might as well, but like we know the dynamic of when there isn't a healthy dynamic or clear communication at home, and you have, in this case, it would be the wife who's creating the false peace, who doesn't want to, you know, stir the pot by like keeping him accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you know, like we're like in serious debt, and there's 2 jet skis and this and that and whatever in the garage that get used as much as your tractor and your drone do, and it's like now we're in a mess because there wasn't
Right.
accountability for each other's idolatry potential,
Right.
which we all have. And Daniel's point is great. Know thyself. Like, you should be able to like be honest with yourself and do a self-assessment and say, where am I weak? What are the potential areas that I'm going to take something and run with it so fast I'm going to blow past everybody and create a mess?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the part that is missing culturally. Is I don't think there is a lot of that self-reflection of, this is something that I'm stuck in this cycle, because that's how it worked for me. Was I realized at some point I was stuck in a cycle of hyper fixated on this thing, get this thing, don't like this thing, move on to the next thing. Hyper fixated, get it, not interested. And like you said before, the fake piece, I think that was with my wife, and it was never real. It's never anything like big money. Because I already have a problem spending money, so it was always like little things, like little knickknacks
Mhm.
or whatever. But my wife, she didn't have to like. We didn't have to have a discussion about it. I think she would just roast me, be like, "Oh, this is what we're doing this week." And then it's like,
so good.
okay. And then that kind of just like snapped me out of it. Like, oh, last week was something else. Oh, the week before that was that thing. Oh, damn, I'm like blowing all this. I'm wasting all this money for things that are just collecting space, and I hate having junk all around the house.
Yeah.
So I like they all just get tossed anyways. But I think, like you said, knowing yourself and finally like having that the blinds opened and the sun coming in, you're like, oh wow, this is really an issue, and I got to stop. Sometimes it is a discussion with your wife. Sometimes it's a brother or sister
Yeah.
that's holding you accountable. Like, but you gotta when somebody is telling you these things, like you probably should wake up and not get like defensive and be like,
Yeah.
no,
Oh.
this is my passion.
And that you know, that for me, it's like when I started introducing accountability into my life, like I realized I have a real problem with being told no.
Mm.
Like I pout like a 2-year-old. Don't believe me? Ask my wife.
Oh,
Like,
You could ask me. I know you do.
you know, don't even. We're not gonna go there, all right? But you know, I get told no, and it's like I'm immediately I'm like shutting down. I'm shutting down, and so becoming aware of that is to know it. But then it's like, okay, what am I gonna do about that? Am I gonna just let my inclination to shutting down or pouting like a 2-year-old? Am I gonna let that continue to grow in me, or am I gonna work on this? And speaking to that self-control and self-discipline, like that is so missing in today's society. Like we can't tell ourselves no. So we can't stand up to ourselves. How are we going to stand up to anybody else? We can't hold ourselves accountable. How are we going to hold anybody else accountable? We forget that a fruit of the Spirit is self-control, which means you have control of self.
Yeah.
And you can. You can't just chalk it up to, I can't. Like, this is how my parents were. This is just what happened. This is how I've always been. I want this, or I need this, or I need that. And it's like, no. All right, you having an Amazon package show up every other day, that's not self-control. Because guess what? There's just another one showing up tomorrow. So clearly that one didn't help you.
You just hurt
That
a lot
one-
of people's feelings.
Yeah.
That one didn't fill your
so
cup.
mean-spirited.
That one didn't fill the void. That one didn't give you what you were looking for. It didn't give you that
It's
fix
so
or that
true.
high. And so it's an Amazon package or it's a line of Coke. We're looking for that high. We're looking for that void filler. And when it doesn't, okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
Or how what's the next high? How can I top that high? And so the self-control thing out the window. We have no patience, so we can't wait for anything. And so it's so easy to have. I don't think it's create a golden calf and that's our object of worship. I think there's idols everywhere, and given every other minute we can be
Sure.
focused on whatever idol it is in our
Absolutely.
life.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know we're trying to land the plane, but I got
That's the most boring part of the episode.
I know. I got one more thing,
Go for it.
because me and my wife were talking about this before I left to come here. I think it can also be an idol can also be an idea that you have, and it could be an idea that you have about yourself. For women, it's that idea of body, like
Sure.
I need this. I'm too fat. Whatever. I need this perfect figure, and I think that becomes now this otherworldly drive to
all-consuming thought.
right
Yeah.
to maintain like this perfect. You got to go to the gym 90% of the week, and you can only eat this and that, and it becomes this overwhelming thing that eventually leads to breakdown. Eventually leads to demise. Eventually, what was it? What was it before? You got to tear it down. Eventually, has
Kill
to get
your
torn
idols.
down because
kill your idols.
kill your idols, because it's unhealthy to maintain in the way that some people hold on to that idea.
Well, the root of all that is self-worship. I mean,
Right.
it really
Exactly.
is. And
That's
I
what-
know nobody's going into it thinking that,
Right.
but that's the root of it. And just to kind of connect, I know the landing gears are out, but
Yeah.
just to connect like to one of my original points is that the whole, again, affirmation culture, it's rooted in self-worship. And that's why it's met so ferociously when anybody tries to speak against it. But left unchecked, you talk about the sexual perversion of our culture and our world right now, and the whole self-worship is justifying people chopping off children's body parts. And again, that's not too far removed. It's all the same. The names are different. But in the Old Testament, you had like the god of Baal, and you had the goddess of Asherah, and these were all very sexually driven practices, and justified by, well, we'll have a good harvest,
Yeah,
we'll
we
have
need
a
some
good rain.
Yeah.
But it involved children sacrifice.
Yeah.
How's it
Ridiculous.
different? You know what I mean? So my favorite, honestly, and speaking of Baal and Asherah, one of my favorite examples in the Bible of things like this is Gideon in Judges. I think it's chapter 6.
Yeah.
And God tells him, you go up onto those high places and you tear them suckers down
tear
and you
down
break
those
them in
idols.
pieces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's the only thing to do with it. You have to tear these things out. And so what do we do? Culturally, as a church, I think we need to be the voice, of godliness and purity for sure. But it all starts personally.
Yeah.
You got to tear down your own idols. You got to recognize them suckers, go up into those high places and tear them down.
And that speaks to the point I was saying before. Like, where's your line? Like, how far are you willing to go? Because I don't think there was ever a recommendation to just like be like, oh, you can just break the arm of the calf and you treat it delicately and just put it down in the fire, burn it slowly. It's like, no, destroy that freaking calf, tear down those idols, tear them all down. And what do you?
Well, no, the best thing is that God actually told Moses, grind it up, put it in water, and make them drink it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, make them taste.
You want your cake, eat it too,
make
buddy
them
boy.
taste the end all of their idolatry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like
So like, what's the length we're willing to go? So with your idols, become aware, but then take action. Like, it's not just good to know thyself, but now you got to act on that, and you got to fight back those idols and those defaults and those things that were just becomes our all-consuming thought or all-consuming desire. And so I really like actionable steps. I think that's what we can take away is like just become aware, take action, establish accountability within yourself, hold yourself accountable, but also get around accountability.
I think the Gideon analogy, well, not analogy, it's a thing
Example.
but the example of Gideon, thank you very much,
No,
Ken.
Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
No
Kenneth,
worries.
thank
No worries, Joshua.
you. Gideon followed through on what God asked him to do, but I'll throw something in there. He wasn't confident enough to do it during the day. He waited until nighttime.
Yeah.
So he followed through on what God asked him to do, but he waited until he felt safe enough to do it. And I think that's can be a good aspect for us too. Is God's if he's asking you, he's putting it on your heart that this is something that you need to change.
Yeah.
Like, let's not overdo it. Let's just make the actionable steps to actually make that change.
Well, look at Jonah. I mean, Jonah made an idol of himself because he didn't want to go to Nineveh. He cared too much for himself that he wasn't willing to kill his flesh and his pride to go to what God was calling him. Guess where he ended up? He ended up there, just on his knees. You know, God. He had a humbling experience, and so those divorce moments and those things, it's like you're going to be brought to. If you can't face your demons, if you can't face your idols, if you can't face your pride and these issues in your life, you're going to be brought to your knees.
For
and
sure.
then what?
That's a good point.
So
One more thing. All right, one more thing. My favorite in the Bible, idol, where the idols come up is in 1 Kings when Elijah is basically mocking the Israelites when they're is it Elijah?
It's Elijah, but he's not mocking
Yeah.
the Israelites. He's mocking
the Amalekites?
yeah.
He's mocking
the worshippers of Baal.
Yeah, whoever the worshippers of Baal are, he's like, yeah, we're gonna burn this. What was it? A bull? We're gonna burn something.
Yeah, burn a
And
sacrifice.
he's like, oh, what happened? Is your God sleeping?
Yeah.
Oh,
And he was like,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry about
Scream
that.
Scream louder.
Oh, you want me to do mine now? Just pour some water on it first.
Yeah,
Like really
douse
drench
it,
it.
yeah.
Really. I just find that so funny, dude.
That is
I
great.
find that so funny.
That is a
But,
great moment.
Yeah, man. Any last thoughts, guys?
Booth?
Booth?
Boof.
No, that was a good episode. I think you guys said it all.
You guys are really crushing it in there for the commentary.
I'm waiting for the moment like they hop in without us prompting. It's gonna be a momentary like moment
Dude,
of object.
the seas are gonna part.
An object of that will be an idol.
Yeah.
An object of worship.
All right, we got nothing on the tables, but we
All right.
hope that
my goodness, I forgot my peace and love sign
Yeah.
again.
Daniel don't got peace or love.
What a mess.
Ken doesn't have love or peace.
No, but I do have a Kenko.
You got
Ken Dog Funko.
Ken
so.
Dog Funko. Kenko, dude.
Kenko.
Gotta
You
get
can catch the unboxing on our Patreon channel.
Yeah.
You can subscribe.
Okay.
Like
We definitely have bonus content if you want to subscribe and donate us some money. We got some bonus content that we can.
And someone please comment and explain what Krampus is because I still don't know.
oh my gosh.
Don't do it. Don't
Back
tell
to
him.
this.
Keep him guessing. Keep him guessing. Well, yeah, good talk. I think a lot of good things that people can really put into work in their own lives. So
For sure.
I really thought this was a great talk, great discussion, and I'm glad we get a chance to do it together, boys.
Yes.
Yeah, and listeners, we need your ideas, man. Like
That's,
we need some feedback. What do you want? What do you want to hear from us? What do you want us to talk about? What podcast episodes you're like, man, I wish these guys would talk about this. Any questions, deep dives, like
What's
could be
your-
anything.
Tell us your church hurt. Tell us your church hurt
Oh,
so we
man.
can talk about
Be a
that.
Unpack
lot-
that.
be
Yeah.
A lot of text.
I would unpack that all day.
You
all
forget
day.
about it. But we get a lot of text that is like super encouraging, which is
We
awesome.
love it. Yeah, we
I think
love
it does speak so much to like. I mean, I know I was busting your chops before, but like it really is such a pleasure and an honor to do this
Oh,
with you
now
guys.
it is. Okay.
Yeah, see, I'm getting sentimental. I got to warm up to it a little bit,
Yeah.
but but we want to hear from you. Like,
Yeah, we'd
you know,
love
your
to.
feedback it means the world to us, and we just want to keep producing content that matters and that helps and that is applicable to your life. So, if you got an idea, you want to hear something, like reach out to us, or else you're gonna keep hearing our whatever we bring up, and it might just devolve into chaos at some point. Who knows?
At some point, we're just gonna go through the whole.
I'll be making chicken coop content pretty soon. I'll be in my Daisy Dukes.
Oh my gosh. End this episode quick.
We out.
Peace and love.
Peace
Love
and
and
love.
peace.
The Not Safe for Sunday podcast was recorded in the loft. You can find us on social media at NSFS Podcast. Audio editing by Spencer Barrowman. Video editing by John Walsh. If you'd like to join us for a Sunday service, you can find us at Conquerors for Christ Church, located at 972 Reed Road in North Dartmouth, Massachusetts.